Okay, so welcome everybody. This is my second presentation for Seguinos. I don't do them very often. So this is my take on the year 2026, the year we're already in, and nearly in February already, of how I see from the things I read and watch and work with my brilliant development team, how the world of coding is changing. So I'm going to give you some of my experiences I've seen just from as a PM, right? And how the role as a PM I see has changed and how I work with my development team. Last year was very much about, let's say halfway through the year, is all about daily commits. The way we used to look at a dev's work was, hey, it's all about the daily commits. How many times they commit per day, at least once, and measuring them on that kind of metric, right? So we was always expected them to just code, just get some code out, right? And then do your commits every day as a way of proving that you're doing your job. Now, what I've noticed very much so in the project is a complete change in the way I look at it and a complete change in the way the devs work. I no longer worry if a dev hasn't made a commit for 1 or 2 or 3 days, maybe 4 days, depends on the size of the task. Because I know that we have these AI tools here to help us, right? So after about 2 or 3 days, I still don't have any commits, it's not a worry to me. As long as I know what they're doing, I don't have to go chase them all the time. That was, like I said, it's very different from last year's when we didn't really use AI, or when it's started to be, let's say, useful, where it would just be, okay, we need to make commits every single day, including the clients who had access to the repo, which we were looking at these metrics. Okay, say, hey, why hasn't so-and-so done a commit? Why hasn't so-so done a commit? This I no longer see either. So that's the biggest change from my point of view I've seen as a PM. Okay, Franco, to the next slide for me, please. Yeah, there we go. So like I say, last year is all about spending our time for you guys on your, what they call the boilerplate code, thinking about the syntax. And that was our bottleneck. Every single day was, how much code could we do? How much code could we do? How much code could we do? Now with the introduction of our AI tools, I'm going to call them tools because AI is just a tool, especially it's not a one-shot solution. So always think of it as AI tool, not just AI, just me. So now we have this time to really think about our solutions, right? The way we architect the solution or a problem. We can spend a majority of our time on that. Also thinking about the UX and the big one, which is the security concerns when our AI code or AI tool is coding, right? So they reckon there's around about 70% of a developer's time is now being reclaimed for what they call the higher order thinking, right? And the higher order thinking is that just that second section where it says architecture, we need to think about that, the UX and the security around that feature as well. Feel free to stop me if you disagree at any time, and I'll be happy to open it up. But that's like an industry way the industry is looking at it now, right? So you guys should have changed the way you work to just coding to thinking, okay, I need to spend my time thinking about how I will architect this solution. Once I've done that, what's it going to look like if there's a UX side of it, obviously. I know lots of guys are just back end, but the guys who are in a full stack or in front end have to think about, okay, how is this going to be for the user on the UX side as well? Okay, anyone disagree with this so far? That you've got a lot more time to think? No? Okay, good. Franco, next slide, please. Okay, so here's a little pie chart of roughly how the industry sees a breakdown of an AI orchestrated day. So we have, again, this will depend if you're on what kind of front end or back end or mixture of the two. but we should be spending around about 50% of our free thinking time, of our time, thinking about, okay, the UX and the testing of the feature or the features that we are tackling at that point. Then we need to spend another large majority of this time, again, thinking about the architecture, and very important that everyone has probably seen in the last 6 months is the security, let's call them flaws of the AI tools, right? We know we've seen many stories, or you should have read many stories, that security is one of the big things that the AI tool is not very good at. So this is where, with this extra thinking time, you can incorporate this 90% of your time thinking about these things: architecture, security, UX, and testing. Testing being a very key point. And then you got the 5%, they say, of the boilerplate code that needs to be produced, and 5% of debugging. In reality, maybe it's a bit more than 5% in debugging. Depends on your experience of the AI tools. I should imagine that most of the devs that work with me would say that the debugging is probably slightly north of 5%. Wouldn't we say? Or do we think that's a reasonable thing? I take that as everyone thinks that that's a reasonable thing. Okay, you can disagree, it doesn't matter. This is just from my point of view and what I've been reading about. So, Franco, do you want to move on to the next one? If no one's got it. There we go. Matthias says about 10%. There we go. These are general things. Okay, cool. Thanks for this. Next one.
Before that, I want to make a point here. What we understand for testing here is like addressing our feature work, not actually writing tests. That became also part of the boilerplate, right? So writing a test right now is easier than ever with the correct architecture for testing, of course. So UI and not testing, but making sure our feature works as we expected, and most importantly, as our client expected to work, right? So I wanted to point out that little thing.
Yeah.
So I will move on to the next.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. Okay, so here's like a little representation of how a developer should be thinking. We're no longer developers, like we are now the architects. So we think about, I'm an architect of the solution. We don't need to think about how we're going to do it. Our first step would be thinking about what we are going to be doing, right? Now we have gained this extra time for the use of our AI tools. We should be really focused and concentrating on what is the solution and the problem that I'm trying to fix, not on the how am I going to do it. We have our AI tool for that. We really need to really spend the time, and this is why I'm saying, when I went back to the beginning, is in the past it would be, where's your commit? Where's your commit? Why is no one committing every single day? Now it's, I don't worry about this anymore. After a couple of days, it's reasonable now, depending on the complexity of the problem, obviously, to allow them the space to really think about this, what it is that this problem is, and of course all the edge cases and all the things related to that feature. We know once you put it into our AI tool, it can code it pretty quickly, right? Depending on the size of the problem. Do we agree with that?
Of course. That's exactly it.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much. So we need to think about the problem, and then we do what is the next step after thinking about what this problem is making these prompts, which are executable requirements in reality. So we need to make sure that we can write them in a way that our tool can understand and that we can measure it against, right? So we've all seen how if you put vague prompts into the AI tool, it will just, the famous word now is slop, it will just return AI slop, right? So this extra thinking time allows us to really think about the solution and really put a prompt that we can give the AI agent or tool the chance to give us what we're asking for, right? So this is where the extra time in thinking comes from, is how can I translate that into a really clear prompt so the tool can go and do its job, which is save you guys from coding it in reality. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of this. Well, actually, Nico, I'm going to introduce Nico at this point, who's going to show you some things that he's been doing. And in reality, I could have picked a number of my developers, but Nico had a really complex thing we did a few weeks ago, which highlights the use of the AI tool and how we should be using it. So, Nico, are you ready?
Of course.
You can share screen.
Okay. Let me share mine. Okay, so when Stuart contacted me to just say a couple of things in this presentation, I automatically remembered a few years ago. Don't want to say many years ago, because I'm not that old. But I was in university at the class of software engineering, and our teacher, she told us something that as a very young and premature programmer, I did not like. He said, no code tools will eventually replace programmers. She said something like that. And obviously she was wrong, because no code didn't kill programming. But here it is AI. And she was right about the second part of her statement, which was, but requirements are going to remain an important part in the software development life cycle. Requirements have always been important, but with AI, it surfaces as the thing that it's obviously the most important for us. As Stuart has been telling us, the cost of the implementation of a codification has decreased. We saw it in the pie chart he showed us. So for me, in my particular role on the back end, that has meant leveraging AI to actually work more on requirements than working on codification problems. What do I mean by this? For instance, not too long ago, I was given the task to implement a certain algorithm as part of our pipeline. And that algorithm was kind of a complex, but it was also the requirements were not mature. The requirements for the feature were not very clear in the client's mind. It actually took us like several meetings to actually elicit a stable set of requirements. And in the meantime, I produced several implementations, which were pretty much as if they were front-end prototypes, but remember, this is back-end. So they were pretty much disposable. And that is a good thing about AI. In the past, we had to write for testing a feature for eliciting requirements for a feature, the most that we could do was creating prototypes with, I don't know, Figma or some other tool. But today, that limitation of just visual um, has kind of faded away a little bit. It did for me because I was able to, through something as simple as this, which is basically an image that I produced in Paint, I was able to feed this kind of images not just to AI, but also to the client. And we were able to discuss requirements. And then, based on the output I received, I was able, a little bit also with the help of AI, but mostly here's where my manual work lives most of the time when developing a feature. I was able to pour down all of those requirements into a high quality prompt. Usually I would put that into a Jira, into a GitHub issue in the description, so that the title of the issue would be the feature and the body would be the specification of the requirements of that feature. This is certainly how I did it, but obviously you're not tied to this. There are many semi-formal tools that you can use. One which that you've seen a lot with the propagation of Mermaid JS across many different tools is UML. Whenever you see a sequence diagram, you are seeing one of the many diagrams of UML. And UML is a semi-formal modeling tool. Well, it's a modeling language and the diagrams are the tools. But all of this is to tell you that we need to focus on requirements, that we need to spend, as Stuart said, that 1 day or 2 days or the time we need getting those requirements, making them more and more mature without afraid of maybe just creating a quick proof of concept, because the proof of concept now is cheaper than 3 years ago. So, for instance, this is just a boilerplate of how to write the prompt. As you can see, you can specify a feature. Well, the feature title, let's call it light splitting endpoint, for instance. Here is where you would start listing just what you know for sure about this feature. And then you would just do a very simple and traditional high-level design of the endpoint in terms of, or the feature itself in terms of the input. Okay, if this is an endpoint, for instance, what are the parameters? Are these parameters coming in the path? Are they coming in the body? Where are they coming from? What's their structure? What information do I need? What is required? What is optional? All of that good information, it would be good for you to specify it. What are the validations that I need to run on that set of data versus my existing data? And then here's where we fail, honestly. We tend to dive too fast into writing the process, into writing the actual business logic. But we need to think, as Stuart said, in terms of the user. A user does not know what are you doing on the back end to treat that data that he is inputting. The user, all he knows, she knows is about input, about output, and about its user experience. So the process is just a part of that, and the part that the user is not aware of. But we need to think of the whole thing. We need to think holistically. And of course, the output. Okay, what does this feature produce? What does it write to my database? What does it return to my user? What does it send to a third-party service? What does it send to an SQSQ? What's the output of it? So this is a template, but for instance, here. Nice. This is, for instance, something that I filled in when I was developing a certain feature for a project. The good thing about these guys, I know that you hate to write text and to specify, but the good thing about writing down all of this is that you can early detect inconsistencies and gaps in the requirements. It is much better to detect that here than to detect that when you are already writing, you are already having the AI agent write, for instance, the tests. Maybe you are just adding tests to the pipeline and you're adding coverage for the wrong thing, or you're just going to send into the development or the QA or the production environment the wrong thing, when we could have anticipated it much earlier, not even without going to knock the client's door, but actually sitting down and writing what we know and what we don't know about requirements. Because that's also reality. We don't know everything. Neither does usually the client. But our job is becoming more requirements oriented than code oriented. So I want you to remember from me this: the important thing is requirements. That would be all.
Thank you, Nico. And I don't believe Nico can correct me if I'm wrong. I don't ever remember saying to Nico, "Hey, where's the code? Where's the code?" Right? So part of a PM's change of mindset is let them go and have the space to do what they need to do, which is also important. So not only as a developer need to think a different way, the people who are managing a project also, thank you very much, also need to think differently. So maybe if you don't have someone who thinks like that, you can sit down and say, okay, we need to come up with a different method, a different solution, or you need to give me the time. Because after Nico spent a couple of days, maybe 3 days, I think it was, then he just produced the PR in the same day, and then spent a few more hours addressing some feedback, right? It wasn't, hey, every single day, go put a solution go commit a solution into the repo, so everyone can see what you're doing. So it's a bit of give and take, a bit of trust on both sides. Trust from the PM that the developer is doing what they need to do, right? And then trust from the developer that the PM is not going to go and stomp all over them because they're not committing code every 5 seconds. Okay.
Yeah, and one other thing that I would like to add is that as part of that reciprocity, of that teamwork, um, of course, guys, you are not. This does not mean that you are married to just one task at a time. Maybe you are, for instance, you're developing one big feature that it will take the most of your time, and maybe you are in the process of maturing those requirements through Slack messages, meetings, and that is more, especially Slack, that is asynchronous, right? So in the meantime, you can grab a little bug, fix it. It is multitask friendly at a certain degree, and I want to say at a certain degree because um, I don't like the word multitasking too much. But yeah, you can work on little stuff too.
Cool. Franco, put the next slide up. Pretty please. Okay, so the architect mind is what Nico was just explaining there. Okay, so now we have this continuous cycle, and Nico was highlighting that as well as he was speaking, right? Is we can generate our code. After we finish generate our code, we can deploy it. And what we ask the development team now is, now you have this extra leeway to thinking, can you go use the feature? Especially it's got a UI. In most of the stuff that we do has a UI. So we can say to the developer, okay, fantastic. Have you gone to use it on the UI? Right? So that should be now our first, let's call it our first QA. Right? The first QA should be from the developers going into the platform and spotting any potential friction point for the user, or maybe it's not doing what they think it should be doing as they're the ones who built it. And then taking that back and refining it. And then starting the whole process again. Okay, it didn't quite work the way I thought it would do on the UI. Let's have a rethink, right? And it might not just be that developer. It might need to go to the front end if you're not doing the front end and think about this continuous cycle again. So they should be thinking, okay, let's generate the code, deploy it, get the user feedback, which would first be the developer. And if they're happy with it, push it down the pipeline, obviously, and then we can go let the users give us feedback, because we'll always get feedback from the users, regardless of how good we think it is, because we're just working to the requirements that we are given, and maybe not the way the user will work on when they get hold of it. And I feel with this extra time we can save via the UI, we can deliver a better end product, just not just for the developer, but as for Zerego as well, with more value to the client, because we've already got our hands on it before we gave it to them, right? So it goes from the dev to the QA, then to the client, as opposed to, hey, the dev thinks it's finished, they pass it to the QA, QA does their job, and then we pass it on if we don't need any refinement. Okay, Franco, then we go to the next one. Okay, now I'm going to talk about a use case. This is from Aero, the project we're doing at the moment, where Nico and Franco are in. And we had this optimization, which hurt the UX in our case, right? So we, through the request of the clients, right, we optimized the performance of some tables, but added a lot of friction to the platform, right? So in fact, when we pushed it, the problem became, okay, this is not very user-friendly, right? These have very data-heavy tables, and they just simply, okay, every time I go to a table, I want an apply button. So I'm making sure we're not making calls to the API unnecessarily. So okay, that's what they want, that's what they need. So we obviously went to give them what they want. And this is before Franco joined us in this, right? So I saw the problem, but I didn't say anything. Franco joined us. and Franco had the foresight to go maybe make some changes to it, but he went to go use it himself. And this is where the feedback came in. He said, hey, we've got some problems here. We can't navigate very well, blah, 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 blah. It's not very good for the UX. Let me go away and think of a solution, right? So because we had this apply button, every time a user navigated away and wanted to come back and vice versa, they lost the filters that they had applied. So the user had to reapply all the filters again, reload the data, and repeat clicks. It was a mess. But we already had a plan in place. So when Franco joined, he said, okay, let me think of a solution of this. And his solution was, okay, we persist the states, what you see on the right there, and we have the same performance but with 0 clicks. Right? We were just doing what the client asked, which was our job, right? The client wants an apply button, we give them apply button. But for us going to use it, we could automatically see the problem and come up with a solution. And as Franco was doing the solution, the client actually said, or the person using it said, oh, this is horrible, blah, blah, blah. This is terrible, and all the adjectives you can imagine. And I think that Franco was on the call with me and said, don't worry about it. We've already seen the problem. Franco's already addressing the problem. Give us a few more days and we'll send it back to you and you'll see the difference in it. Right? So anyway, it was a great solution. They were happy and they could see the difference that we could make for them. But with that being said, Franco is the star of the show. So in this case, Franco, I will hand it over to you where you can tell your story.
All right, thanks, Stuart. Yeah, when we started working with AI, it was like a journey. So we started to figure out the problems that the AI brought over the time. So it wasn't as easy as, okay, ask AI to do this, it will magically do it for you, and you will save a lot of time, and we will be happy. That's a utopian idea that doesn't exist, of course. So we had to put the focus somewhere else, not on the coding. I think this whole session is about this, if it wasn't clear, but on the architecture concepts. For me, I love architecture, so I was in like in a garden full of flowers, and everything was nice. One problem I saw frequently when working with AI tools is that just by adding an AI to figure out something, like, okay, I have this problem, I need you to solve it, and I won't tell you about the project, about the context you need, or what's the objective in the end for this. So the AI went and solved it quickly and easy, okay, and it has added a layer of complexity on top of what it was already built. So, okay, maybe it's harmless for now. Let's focus on my current task and keep like bringing features to the table. Then another request came in. We need to add some other functionality on top of the platform, on top of the filtering architecture in this case. And okay, we have added another layer of complexity came in. So in the end, when we tried to refactor this to make it work, it was a mess. And who's the fault? The AI, the client, our fault as developers. And of course, the fault was on us because not thinking it in an architecture-wise way. So that's a turning point in our history. So we started thinking the solutions as, okay, let's focus on the whole system architecture and applying reusable solutions, clean solutions, and more important, don't let the AI to figure out things that we should already know, architecture-wise, right? So we won't tell the AI how to, map a data set. We will tell them, okay, I want this to be reusable across all of the pages and with type safety features. And that actually started to make the difference. And so the problems that came in later weren't too difficult to solve because we have a development process which is aligned with the architecture of the project, of the platform itself. So I don't know if I'm clear with this. Do you have some questions? All right. And I have some metrics I want to show because we were analyzing this journey. And before joining this team, I wasn't really using like AI tools. So I was adapting it like over the time because I was thinking that maybe it wasn't too useful since the results weren't as good as we expected. But again, I was giving the AI the responsibility of figuring out when it was my responsibility. So this was my adoption of AI over the time. So in October, I delivered 24,000 lines of code. We had a big integration for operators, for those who know. And if we have to separate the AI usage against my own hand, I have delivered 21,000 lines of code myself, and the AI just helped me with 2,900. Then I started like embracing the AI usage because I started to like it. And now November was kind of different. Those are less line of codes, but if you see here, this stats, the usage of AI was 61% in November against 11% in October. And then the breaking point came in December when we figured out, okay, this is not working as we expected. We had a lot of trouble with complexity, actually. So this is where we started like thinking in an architectural wise way. And then the result is January being 94% of the code written by AI. And you will notice the important thing here is how this this bar was reduced over the time just to be practically nothing, right? This is what some problems were faster for me to write the code and write the prompt for the AI to solve it. So, I mean, when you have to change a line of the text, some random line in the code, not writing a feature, of course. So the overall change was 82%. And if you notice something else, there's less lines for each month, right? This is because we are already aligned to an architecture which works very well. So any feature that comes in, it's just easy to integrate. So we have to write less code to integrate. So this is a good thing, actually, not a bad thing. We are more efficient than before. And this is like I brought the amount of tickets I solved for each month. This is not perfect because some tickets may be easier to solve than others, but in an average point of view, they were very similar. So we can take these numbers as if they were the same in difficulty, right? So by not using AI, in October, I delivered 33 issues with an average of 700 lines of code per issue. So if it was similar in November, then the decision of like caring about architecture came in December. And now if you see, we practically doubled the amount of tickets that we solve each month with less lines of code. And probably Stuart can say, but it seems like the the client is happier than before with our development. So I wanted to show that this is just for me, because I can grab the cursor usage metrics. But if you are curious, you can go and look at your own metrics. You can see them in cursor. So yeah, and I think that the next challenges for us in this new AI development era is to embrace the tools in a way that it works for us. Because not every tool and not every feature that AI tools brings are useful actually. And start detecting these patterns that AI tends to do, even if the guardrails of the guidelines are designed. For example, AI is really, really bad at respecting the dry solid principle. Even if you told it to respect it through the guidelines, it will try to write the same code every time you ask for it. So if you prompt the AI, okay, I want this function to be implemented across several components, it will write the same function in all of the components. Those are stupid things, but those are the kind of problems that addressing them will make us have better code and overall less bugs in the code base. So yeah, I wanted to show this. Yeah, we actually do, but the agents tends to ignore them. So that's more of our responsibility to detect when it does and correct them. Say, okay, make this reusable. Don't repeat the same code everywhere. I think. How much time do you spend generating features and reviewing the generated code? Well, every feature is kind of specific, but it's like in the first slide when you are no longer writing the code, so you have spare time to do something else. I think this it is pretty much accurate. If you go back to this, so writing the code of the actual feature has become 5% of the time you spend working on it. 5 to 10%. In the case of the front-end development, maybe the backend has a different statistic, but for sure it is not writing the code and reviewing it should no longer be the main focus on the development. I don't know if that answers your question, Matty. All right. So I will go back to it and let's start wrap up.
Cool. On to slide 7 then, please. Yeah, we thought about that. Okay, so this is what Franco and even Nico even touched on, right? We need to trust what the AI is giving us to a degree, right? Because AI can be wrong. We've all done the famous test where you say, "Are you sure?" and then they start doubting themselves, right? So and we still need to own, which Franco just touched on as well. We still need to own the code, right? Even though the AI tool is writing it for us, like it says here, our name is on the P. In the case of developers' name is on the PR, and they need to make sure that the security is looked at. They can think about edge cases and performance, which is a very interesting and can be a very difficult thing, optimization and performance. But again, with this extra time, we should be looking into that as well. So even though, as you see, Franco's AI use skyrocketed, right? he's not just, hey, I touched everything, just pass everything, blah, blah, blah. His name is still on it. Right? Same with Nico, same with anyone in the team. They're still very much aware that, yeah, I'm going to trust the AI, but I still need to go verify it does what he's saying to do. Right? So move on for me, Franco, because I don't want to go over an hour. And again, as developers, right, now we have this extra time, we can really focus on what the business needs are, right? We can, in fact, engineering, as it says here, with the design phase, can be really close to the business now, because we can think so much more about what we need to do, as opposed to, like I say, just be banging away on the keyboard thinking about just coding. So it gives us a great opportunity as a team to align with what the business needs are of the client we are delivering to. And like both Nico and Franco were saying, it's the outcome that is the important thing, right? We think about the feature and the outcomes that the feature brings. Okay, skip to the next one, which I think is the last one, right? Yeah, okay. So to wrap up this little session, what we optimize for is what we become, right? So if we're doing everything to our best of our ability, we're going to become much better. The product that we are giving over to the customers can be much better. As you saw at the beginning, the bottleneck for development now is this thinking stage. It's no longer spending 7 hours a day in front of a keyboard typing away and thinking about all the complexity of what you're writing in syntax. It's okay. The time is going to be all on the thinking stage. Again, as Franco and Nico were referring to, it's the system and the architecture we put in place, which is more important than the features now. As Franco suggested, we can just develop features, put layers and layers and layers of complexity on it. But in the end, we reach a point where it's, oh man, we need to revisit this and go look at the architecture and think about how we can do this to make it easy. And the client always pivots, if and when they pivot, right? Or if and when they change the requirements. So we can spend our time on there. And in fact, accountability is higher than ever, right? Though we have that AI tool doing stuff for us, we have all this time to think about the solutions and to be more accountable for what we do, right? This is the key. So hopefully the key that everyone has heard from all of us is that we have gained a lot of time, and this time should be our thinking time. We should be spending as much time as we need thinking about the architecture, thinking about the solutions, thinking about how the user will use this before we go and get our AI tool to code it for us, then check our code, then go use it, which is where we can use some of that spare time. If we go use it, we are bringing more value, not only to the product, but overall to the clients and the users, right? This is good for the developer. This is certainly good for Zurego. The more quality and the better business we can do for our clients is to just give them something that is really good. And it shows that we care. This is the important message. We took the time to think about this solution. We took the time to go and test it. We took the time to iterate over it. And we will listen to you, and we took the time to iterate again. But hopefully, they'll iterate less because we have spent the time and effort in doing the first steps correctly. And this comes from, like I say, it's a two-way street. It comes from the development team doing their job, which is now a lot of thinking, as we have seen, and whoever's in charge of the project, the PM, even the PO, if there's a PO, product owner, is trusting the team to go away and come up with the solution and not be on top of them asking, where's your code, where's your code, where's your code, why are you not doing commits? Okay, I think we have a pretty clear message, hopefully. I will thank Nico and Franco for their wonderful work. not only in this meeting, but in the projects we're in. Like I said, I could have used probably many examples and different developers. So if I didn't select you, don't take that as a slight on you. It's just I need to select a couple of people, not have everybody doing it. Someone needs to be working on the projects, right? Okay, does anyone have any questions or doubts? Any comments? Anything they disagree with? The floor is open. If you think we're wrong.
Just to say thanks for the presentation and the hard work.
Mr. O has got his hand up. Oh no, he hasn't got his hand up. Okay, I think we can wrap it then if no one's got any questions. I hope we found it useful. It's something I really wanted to do because I think the shift has been so much in the last, from one project to the next project in a few months. The shift has been so great. It's something that we shouldn't be scared of. It's something we should be embracing. Like I say, both on the developer side and on the management of the project side, is this thinking. Are you adding features, definitions to the repo? This is at my development team.
The front-end wise, we have a system that I would like to show you. It's because we figured out that placing some parts of the context in comments in the UI components will help the AI agents to understand better what we try to do in that component. So in that way, we are almost always sure that the AI respects the line of thinking when modifying components or adding new features. Then, of course, through the guidelines, and yeah, that's it. Nico, what do you think?
I like what you are doing, Franco, in the front end. Backend wise, in our side of the project, we are not storing the definitions in the repo. What we are doing is that on the GitHub issues, we save basically the descriptions, the definitions, the requirements, and we then use the GitHub MCP server to just go and fetch the requirements from the issue ticket itself. But I would like to do something like what Franco is doing, ideally.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably easier in the front end because the development is more straightforward. I will show every component has this structure of documentation. So even CodeRabbit can look at this and see, okay, the code does something that the comment does not say, or here is, the comment says that it will react in that way and the code doesn't. There's a saying that I don't know if it was told by Linus Torvalds, the creator of Linux, that says comments lie, but code doesn't. So in that case, the agent can actually see if the comment is lying and ask, okay, what's going on here, and what should I do? And that's very useful even when we are doing code reviews. The worst part of this approach is that when you manually edit code, you need to check the comments because if you forget to edit the comment here, then the review will fail because CodeRabbit won't let you pass. And practically every piece of front end will have some kind of documentation / context, depends on how you want to look at it.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah. Question for Franco. Um, Franco, in this time that I see that you have like leaned forward into more AI usage in your solutions. And I wanted to know if you've seen like an improvement in like the success ratio of one-shotting problems with prompts, or like how much time do you choose to spend just chatting with open code, with cursor, with Claude code, and like, and if you have seen an improvement, like what's the differential that you've seen make that improvement, or is it just a big compound of small things that, documentation, storing agents, MD. Um, just curious.
Um, well, my workflow is usually I know what to do. I figure it out because I spend the time thinking, and then I create a prompt just for that, and letting the agent to know what I want and the proper context, because since it is not like you don't know about what's happening in the code, you actually know more of the code than before, because you know what architecture patterns are being applied and where. So next time you need to edit something, you will know. And the good thing about AI, if they see that you have implemented some kind of pattern or architecture and you have it documented in the context, it will automatically follow it. So, and this is part of in the solid principles. I think it was the Boy Scout rule. When you see something that is wrong, even if it is not part of the scope you are doing, you need to make it better anyway. So by documenting like how things are technically designed in the part of the context, and if you need to update that later, the AI will figure out automatically. So that's why having an architecture concept beforehand in development is important when using AI. Yeah, at first time it feels like there's a lot of moving parts, because you will need to get used to actually knowing how to work with AI, which it is not that easy as it seems. You need to get used to how to work with cursor. Yeah, and even at the point of how do you write the prompts. I think this can be even a separate session on its own, right? And but yeah, that's my workflow, and it is based on like one good documented prompt, and then like 2 or 3 prompts of following up in case the AI did something I don't like, or something that I know it won't work. And that's it. It is not about like long flows of working with AI for the same feature. This is also a responsibility of the PM, because we can work like that because we have well separated the issues. If you don't have like specifics of the problem you need to solve, and the AI won't know how to do it. And this was mentioned by Nico, where the requirements were not well defined, were vague, and it integrates not only in the coding part of the development, it's just part of the life cycle of being a developer right now. Even for, I don't know how many we had to, I remember we made a session of how to write a PR here in Sarajevo, and we came to a structure that we need to follow, and maybe writing the PR takes some time, and we don't have that time. Probably we need to work on other features. Right now writing the description of a PR is just a prompt away from you. So we need to embrace AI in the whole life of a developer, not just in the coding part, and even for the PMs and the designers.